Good evening from Ibiza, España, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be going through the differences between narcissism and confidence, and I'm going to give you 4 guidelines for how to tell the difference. And then we'll talk a little bit about why it's important, and then I'll go straight into questions. Save your questions. When you do have a question, try and make it 1 sentence long and end in a question mark so that I can see easily that it is a question, and that would be very helpful. So, but I think what can start to happen is when people see somebody who's confident or extroverted by nature, they can start to conflate that with narcissism. Now, if we're going to be talking about narcissistic personality disorder, we must stay within a fairly strict definition of what it is that we're talking about. So you see somebody who's confident, they're extroverted, they might say things that you don't like, they might have an interpersonal style that you just don't like. You just intuitively are just like, I don't want to know that person. That's completely fine. But that is distinct and must remain distinct from saying, I think that person has narcissistic personality disorder, or that person is a narcissist. He's a narcissist. She's a narcissist. It's lazy. It's not, and it's not helpful. And I'll explain why in a moment. The first thing to look out for is a consistent pattern of behavior where they show a lack of empathy for the people around them. So if somebody's very confident and they're very extroverted, there's no reason, if all we're looking at is confidence and or extroversion, for them to be dismissive and cruel and disinterested in the needs of other people, and to frequently display an interpersonal style where they're putting people down, or where they show open disdain for the needs of other people. That isn't confidence, and that's not described by confidence. That's not explained by extroversion. It doesn't mean it's narcissism. But if you take all of the 4 things I'm going to give you and add them up, it's an indicator that you could be looking at somebody with highly pronounced narcissistic traits, or that they have narcissistic personality disorder. So the first thing we're looking for a consistent pattern across time where we see a distinct lack of empathy. They really don't seem to care what other people think. You want to be seeing a lot of entitlement, entitled to special care, entitled to special treatment, not feeling that the rules that they think should apply to other people apply to them. Sort of a law unto themselves, particularly if you see that they feel entitled to cause other people to suffer or to be indifferent to the needs of other people because they're special and unique. Again, that's not described by confidence. That isn't a confident person. That's got nothing to do with extroversion. Again, it doesn't mean narcissism, but it does mean something a little bit nasty is going on with that person. The third thing to look for is, do you see a grandiose, delusional self-image? So do you see a lot of grandiosity there? So let's deal with grandiosity first. So number 3, the third thing is grandiosity and grandiose delusion. Grandiosity, are you hearing a lot of name dropping? Are they talking about this person in that industry, celebrities, music industry, people they know, people they've met, people they've spoken to, high-ranking politicians? If they're academics or intellectuals, professors from esteemed colleges and universities who have paid them grandiloquent compliments about how brilliant they are an awful lot of stories that they tell you about them and how wonderful they are. There's an awful lot of the verbiage, the noise that comes out of their face hole about them and how amazing they are. That is a preponderance towards grandiosity. The delusional side of it is, have you noticed that they lie? They lie quite a lot, and they're living a lie. So some of their bragging starts to border into pathological lying. That is not explained by confidence. That is not explained by a person being an extrovert. It's not conclusive proof of narcissism, but that one would be, for me, an indicator that that person is on a sliding scale for narcissism, because they're using a grandiose, delusional narrative of themselves, of the world, and their place in it in order to cope, in order to laud it lord it over other people in order to feel superior to other people, and so on and so forth. And the fourth thing that I would want you to look for, if we're being smart, and I'd like to think, because I have grandiose delusional narcissistic fancies, I'm just kidding, and the people who follow my channel put up with me and put up with the things I say again and again, because their values sort of align with mine, and they agree that words are important. They agree, even if we're not academics, we're not clinicians, we're not writing PhDs, the definitions are fairly important. So if you're smart and you're here with me, I want you also to remember the importance of the concept of narcissistic injury and narcissistic rage. If a person is very confident or extroverted in their nature, and a slight against their self-image, their projected reaction-seeking self that they're pushing out to the world, that they're advertising. These are advertising type individuals. This is who I am. I'm very strong. I'm very powerful. I'm very sexy. Everybody loves me. I'm very smart. I'm very clever. I'm very skilled. I'm very tough. I'm very this. I'm very that. That's what comes up. They're advertising. They're advertising. They said, this is who I am. This is who I am. If something comes along, a person, a piece of data, information, negative feedback, that puts a dent in that image, in that shell-like, defensive, false, delusional, grandiose narrative, and that's called a narcissistic injury. You could call it you could think of it as a narcissistic trauma, a narcissistic shell break. So now my bloated, egotistical, sore, painful, annoying for me and for everybody around me sense of self, so bloated and so sick, and so craving for attention, where I make people suffer, I'm suffering. If anything pricks this, if a prick of sufficient strength or length were to come along, or thickness, to create a narcissistic injury in the sense of self, and their automatic, spontaneous response to this minor infraction, that all of us as adults regularly put up with. I don't know about you, but I put up with it daily. Like, things don't go my day consists of a series of things that largely don't go my way, certainly at the moment. And you just put up with it, like, because I don't know, that's life. Life is complicated. It's not always a bowl of cherries. If their response to a slight, to an injury, to a wound, to the false self, is to fly into a rage, and we call this narcissistic rage. Let's be clear. It's a disproportionate overreaction in defense of the false self. And it is extreme. It's highly emotional. You can feel the rage, the anxiety, it's got an almost hysterical, psychotic quality to it. The individual is just subsumed, and how dare you suggest that I'm not the special fantasy that I believe I am, that I'm not the most perfect. How dare the slightest grain of grit of negative feedback touch me? And it's this shield is so bloated and sick. It's sensitive because it's not healthy. I really don't want to be graphic and medical, but you know what happens when wounds can occur, and you get like, and especially if it's infected. I won't be gross, but it's sore, it's bloated, it's swollen, and it's sore. And what's inside of it is not good stuff. And if there is an injury, it can explode. Yuck. But your body works that way. The body works that way. So their psyche works. So that disproportionate rage is extraordinarily vindictive. And it lasts. Are you seeing the thumbs up on the screen? Are you seeing fireworks? Am I having a psychotic breakdown? I hope you can all see the psychotic breakdown I'm having. I hope you can all see the fireworks I just saw. Richard Grannon has breakdown on YouTube Live. I can see thumbs floating and fireworks. So what am I saying? So, you would be pursued for this infraction forever. They would hunt you down, and for making them feel even remotely less than, they would seek to punish you disproportionately by obliterating you, your family, your business, your interpersonal relationships, your reputation. Nothing will satiate the towering, grandiose, narcissistic Sauron like rage other than total decimation of the enemy. I mean, it's just wild. It's psychotic. That's not explained by confidence and extroversion. How do I make? I hope you can see the stuff on the screen. I can. How do I make this stop? You have to up your meds. That's where it is. Now, why am I doing this video? What I'm seeing, and I think we're all seeing, is an explosion in the use of the term narcissist. This is not conjecture. You can go to Google Trends and put in, you can see how many people are searching the term narcissist over the time that I've been in this. I mean, it was going on way before. I didn't come along until 2012. Online narcissism spaces existed since at least the year 2000, forums and such. I was late 2012. Every year that went by, I said, this is the last year. We've hit peak narcissism. The interest in this will dissipate. And every single year I've been wrong. The interest has just grown and grown and grown. So there are two parts to this. I just did a video on this that we're releasing in 2 days' time. Let me see if I can remember. The two parts seem to contradict each other, but they don't. There are two patterns that exist in the same space in the same time. It's not contradictory, though they're at first glance, if you take a superficial look, it will seem to be contradictory. But hear me. In the past, I've said I don't believe that there's an explosion of actual narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder in the culture. I said that the clinical data doesn't back it. The clinical data has changed, certainly in the last, since 2016 to now. I do think there's more I think there's more trait narcissism in the culture. I think there's more high, not NPD, but people on the spectrum from narcissism in the culture. And probably, though it will take another 10 to 15 years to know for certain, we probably will see a huge growth of actual narcissistic personality disorder based on the way kids born from 2008 onwards are being raised or not being raised in the culture in which they're raised in. I think narcissistic personality disorder by the time they hit 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, it will explode. It's going to be a big problem. This isn't going away. Why do I think this is happening? You know me, you've heard me talk about it before. I usually lay the blame at the foot of consumer capitalism, the emphasis being on consumerism, not free market capitalism, to blame consumerism as a way of keeping what is probably a deeply damaged, if not dead, economy afloat via artificial means and turning it into effectively a zombie. These are zombie economies. But okay, fine. That's a separate subject for a separate day. That's what I blame it on. And I think that is a good starting point for answering the question, why are we seeing an explosion in narcissism? Now, the second thing I'm going to say is, whilst this really is happening, there's an people saying that they're the victims of narcissistic abuse, and there's an explosion in people calling other people narcissists. But you just said there is an explosion in narcissism. Yes. But over here, let's consider another, what do you call it? Oh, embarrassing. I'm live and I can't remember the term. Oh, it's embarrassing. Factor. Let's call it a factor for now, and I'll look it up afterwards and I'll put the correction in the comments. Another factor to consider against that. So, is there more broccoli growing in the garden? Yes. Well, more people are seeing broccoli. Yes. But more people are also claiming to have seen carrots and sweets and other vegetables as well. Wow, that was terrible. Too late now. We're live. So real world narcissism is exploding. people claiming to have been the victims of narcissistic abuse is exploding, and I'll explain why that's happening in just a second. But they're also just calling people narcissists. Well, what else is exploding? Um, the TikTok and Instagram mental health phenomena. People claiming to be ADHD, people claiming to be autistic, people claiming to be people who've self-diagnosed as borderline. They create whole communities online of hundreds of thousands of people, and if you say anything about it, they come at you as a mob. They'll dogpile you in a mob. You've probably seen on my TikToks and on my Instagram sometimes it happens. Not that BPD doesn't exist, not that ADHD doesn't exist, not that autism doesn't exist, but there is an explosion in people who are claiming to have really, I think I lost you for a second there. You lost me. So there's an explosion in people claiming it's generally referred to as the psychologization of culture. We are psychologized, and it's really not healthy. There is an explosion in narcissism. Is it commensurate with people claiming to be narcissistic abuse? To some degree, yes. Is it commensurate with the number of people who denounce others as being narcissists? No. Why? So I say that because I haven't done proper research, but I would suggest it's a reasonable hypothesis, well worth testing, that most people who put the word narcissist in their mouth turn around and say, he's narcissist. I've changed where the Wi-Fi is now coming from my data. Let me just check. Can you all hear me and see me? Give us a thumbs up if you can. He back. He exploded with his last hand gesture. It's just a massive amount of archontic interference. It's better. Was it wavy before? Okay, cool. I'm in Spain, and I was using the Wi-Fi, but actually, let me check I'm on the right SIM card. I'm not on my British SIM card. No, I'm not my British SIM card. I'm not with O2. I'm with Orange, Spanish Orange. So a lot of people who are using it, they're reducing the meaningfulness of it to basically a slur. It's now becoming nothing more than a slur. So why? So there's these two things here, and this effect over here, where you see this explosion in people saying they're the victims of narcissistic abuse and claiming that they see narcissists everywhere. This branch, I'm going to give you two reasons for this branch over here. I really miss my whiteboard. Good faith reason, bad faith reason. Good faith reason for why tons of people are saying he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist, I'm the victim of narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse has now trended to the point where it's changed its meaning to anybody who disappoints me or makes me feel bad is a narcissist. So this is still good faith. This is still in good faith. There's just confusion. Bad narcissist equals bad person equals narcissist. Why you can't just say bad person? I don't know. Maybe it sounds cooler. Like, yeah, I know about psychological terms. I'm really into psychology. I'm just really into psychology. Who do you like? Who do you read? Really young, really young. What books of his have you read? Mainly just like misattributed quotes on Facebook and Instagram. I'm kidding. Nobody's really like that. It's all done in good faith. And it's got to the point now, I think, based on what I'm observing, because I don't coach anymore. But when I'm chatting to people, obviously I see people in the street, they come up to me and they'll be like, "Hey, I have a story for you." And I'll go, "Hooray, please tell me the story of your torturous heartbreak." If you see me in the street, I'm happy to meet you. I usually have a face that looks like this, but inside I'm singing and happy. So just come over and say hi. It's fine. I don't mind at all. Um, it's a way of understanding relationship breakdown to the point where I think when a relationship, boss, family, romantic, doesn't work, people, not all people, but many people go to who's the narcissist. Well, relationships only break down because of narcissism. So who is it me or is it my husband? Is it me or is it my mother? Is it me or is it my boss? That's not good. That's not good. Why? Because for the actual victims of narcissistic abuse, it creates like a miasma of contradictory information in the online space, like YouTube. So people are getting information from over here and it matches their confirmation bias. They get information over here that doesn't match their experience. And they go, well, that's not right. That sounds like me. Maybe I'm the narcissist. Of course they would do that. And so things get very confusing. The bad faith reason why this is happening is because it's just a very convenient way of throwing a slur at somebody. I don't like her. I don't like what she's saying. I don't like him. He didn't text me back. Lol. And so, or she didn't text me back, or Z didn't text me back, or Therion Self didn't text me back. And so, Therion Self is a narcissist. Furry Self is a narcissist. Zizer is a narcissist. This is not good. That then reduces the study, the understanding of narcissism to scapegoating and effectively a witch hunt, which is why, and you guys stick with me because I do this a lot. I'm like, let's go through and really define what it is we're talking about. And remember, you always have the get out clause. If a relationship isn't working and somebody's not respecting your boundaries, you can leave without them being a psychopath. You can leave without them having borderline personality disorder or being schizoid or being antisocial or being. You can leave. You don't need the psychiatric definition to leave. Some people are bad people. Some people are bad. They're not kind. They're not good. They don't love you. They don't care about you. They don't care about the people around them. They have a deficit of compassion, and they're very self-interested. They're very self-motivated, and they can be all of these things in a way that is extremely destructive, and still not get a clinical diagnosis for any PD or any mental health issue. That, what I just said to you, is a fact. I should have Max clip that and put it somewhere. And it's important that we all remember that. It's not the way for understanding life. It's not a good filter for understanding the trials and tribulations of life. It's not a good filter. It's, in certain contexts, it's not the worst, but you must be very careful with it because then you kind of get lost in the trees of like, well, who's a narcissist and what's narcissism and what isn't, because we all have narcissism. We're all self-interested. We can all have bad days and be less empathic. My God, I know I can. Than on other days where you have the resources, you have slept well, you have the time and the space to say, okay, I'm ready to hear this. I have space for this. But if you're not, if you don't have space for it, then you won't, you just be like, I just can't deal with this. I have all this stuff to do. I can't deal with this. And so in that moment, you screenshot that moment and go, well, where's your empathy? Well, I just don't have anything left to give today. I'm like, I just have nothing. Is that narcissism? I mean, if we're going to if we're going to go down the philosophical road of saying, yes, the core of the human experience is narcissism, and so these are all expressions of your selfishness and your self-love, just like Narcissus went, where are we going to go? That's why I prefer different definitions and different boundaries. Is the person abusive? Are they about the devil's work? Are they doing evil? Is there lying? Is there cheating? Is there underhanded? And that's you've heard me say it on the channel. Like, let's go back. Let's go back to the old fashioned ways of looking at it sometimes, and be like, is this evil? Is this person of evil intent? As I said over here, we have to consider that not everybody's operating in good faith. Nobody's waking up in the morning going, I wonder how I can contribute to the lovely old world today, to my lovely fellow humans. Mwah, mwah. They ain't. They ain't. If you wanted, and I'll finish on this, if you wanted a broad structure for understanding human behavior through that lens, I can only say from the bottom of my heart, narcissism is the wrong one. Psychopathy is the correct one. You will get so much more useful, applicable data, rules, guidelines to the mindset of looking for psychopathy than you will from narcissism. For various reasons that I don't want to get into here, because we'll be all over the place and then I'll be chatting for an hour and a half again. So just to the point of confidence and extroversion, I know that like some of you have been with narcissists who are confident and they're extroverted and they seem to have everything together and they're very switched on, and maybe it was a woman and that woman looked a certain way and she spoke a certain way, and then you see another woman who's like a narcissism coach and she sounds like that woman who abused you, and you're like, well, you're confident like she was, you're a narcissist. It's good philosophically so that we can think more clearly, to have these boundaries drawn out in our heads ahead of time. You can just say you don't like her, like I can point to people online who are confident and extroverted, and if I listen to more than 30 seconds of them talking, I'm ready to throw up in my own mouth. I don't want to hear from them. Do they have a PD? No. Are they mentally ill? No more than everyone else is in this culture. Is there anything deeply significantly wrong with them? No. Are they evil or malicious or exploitative? Not that I can see. I just don't like their style. And so inside of my head, I can divide from that and just go, well, I have a choice. I don't have to listen. There's loads of people I can listen to. I ain't listening to that. The final point with this is performance, music industry, acting, public speaking like this. It can require the acquisition of a false self. Do you all remember Eminem and Slim Shady? And do you remember D12, the Detroit 12? They all had two names. Everybody got two names. So then you're dividing, for performance-based purposes, the real you from one version of you and another version of you, so that you can go about doing your job. And honestly, hip hop is a pretty good example of that. You might be introvert, INFJ, but you're very good as a lyricist. You're musical. It's not going to work to if you want to be big. If you don't care about being big and you only care about having 200 fans who absolutely love you, it's fine. But there's a mannerism you have to adopt. So hip hop's a really good example for that. Metal, punk back in the day, and punks make, punk, modern punk. There's a way you have to be. That ain't you. That's not really you, but there's a way you have to be if you want to succeed. And you want to talk narcissistic psychopathy. I'm a hip hop fan, but you want to talk narcissistic psychopathy. What's more narcissistically psychopathic than hip hop culture and hip hop lyrics? But that's the point. That's the point. You're not really supposed to take it sincerely. It's all terribly postmodern and meta. So if you see somebody who's putting on a performance, you have to be able to divide that from the real person. I remember people seem to have lost interest in Myers-Briggs, but when I started 2013, it started in 2012, and it got bigger in 2015, everybody was obsessed with my Myers-Briggs type, and everybody would come on and say, you are an ENTP. And I wasn't interested in Myers-Briggs because clinically it's not great. They've done studies with it where they can come to a group of people, give them a test, and then 50% of them can have a completely different result just 6 months later when they retest them. Maybe that's the conditions they're doing it under. I don't really know. It's not really something that particularly interests me. But a person who I respected, who was an intelligent, scientifically minded human being, she convinced me to sit down and do the test properly. And I am whatever the rarest Myers-Briggs type is. I think it's INFJ. I am the most introverted person imaginable. So in my real life, if you meet me and I'm out on the street, I probably won't be very active. I won't have high volume. I'm quite quiet. I'll listen to you. I'll talk to you. I don't like having a ton of attention around me because, and that's the difference between introversion and extroversion. You know that, right? Introversion uh, draws energy from solitude. I love being on my own or with one person or on my own. Extroverts, they draw energy from being around a ton of people. I find it exhausting. I find it completely exhausting. But my online persona versus my real life persona are at odds. You'll educate me. You all know more about the Myers-Briggs. Many of you do. What's the rarest type of Myers-Briggs? It's like 4% of the population. It's an extremely introverted person, but everybody thought I was the CNTP type person. So this is another thing that we have to divide. Let's not be lazy. Let's not just throw the term narcissist out. So there's two things let's not do. Let's not throw the term narcissism around. Let's say you and I, we're mates, aren't we? We've been here for a while. Let's stay focused on people we think have NPD because that's going to be more helpful. We actually think it's NPD. And you now, based on the videos that I've done, especially the videos I've done recently, you have a whole, what do you call that? It's not an artillery. Brain's not working tonight. You have a means for knowing whether that is NPD or not. Not straight away. It will take time. It takes observation. So that we get out of this thing of saying everybody who I don't like is a narcissist. And the other thing is, please try not to view the breakdown of every relationship through the lens of who's the narcissist. Because if you have, imagine now 1,000 people and they live on an island and there's one village on the island and everybody gets this ideological infection that there are these things around us called narcissists, and our society will be pure and free from evil if only we can find who the narcissists are. Who's the narcissist? Who's the narcissist? Who's the narcissist? But there's only 1,000 people. This experiment has been lived. It was called New England in the 1600s, and Arthur Miller wrote a play about it that I have acted in. Yes, I have. I've played John Proctor. And you have the Salem witch trials. Okay, they weren't hunting for narcissists, but things went wrong. They were sick. The food wasn't abundant. Survival was very, very hard. And this is part of the human psychology. They started looking for people to blame. They weren't saying who's the narcissist. They were saying who's the witch, who's kissed the devil's teats, who's been dancing with Satan and his minions naked round a fire in the woods doing the Black Mass. There must be evil somewhere, and it can't be in me because I am so pure and good. They would call the wives Good Wife Proctor, Good Wife Smith, Good Wife Good, and they would reduce Good Wife to Goody, Goody Good, Goody Proctor, Goody Smith. I am good. I'm baptized. I'm Christian. There's no devil in me. There's no evil in me. And there's this desire to say, because I am clean, but now you have 1,000 people. I don't even know if it was 1,000 people in Salem. It was probably like 400 at first. But in our thought experiment, we have 1,000 people who all believe that they're good, and they only have to find who the narcissists are, because there are problems on the island, because life is problematic. It's hard. But if we just find, the literature says it's 5%. So once we've finally rounded up and thrown into the sea our 5%, then the crops will always be good. There'll be no storms. No one will get eaten by sharks when they're fishing. Am I making sense? It's not good. We don't want to create witch hunt style dynamics. It's not healthy. Not that it will lead to like burnings or some public sort of humiliation and social media cancellation, all that stuff. But it just doesn't lead us towards truth. There is evil. There is evil in the world because nature doesn't. The world doesn't do what we want it to do all the time. You know, your kids might get eaten by wolves or fall down a ravine one day, or you might get a sore tooth and die from. You know, that's evil. But there's also evil in us, in each and every one of us. There is the capacity for harm. There is the capacity for darkness. And what I dislike is the dishonesty and the hypocrisy of saying, I'm pure, so the evil is out there. I admit to nothing, but it's all out there. That's scapegoating. That's the ancient Jewish tradition of taking the sins of a small community, the sins of the tribe, putting it into the scapegoat, and then pushing the poor bastard out in the desert to die from dehydration, starvation, and predators. And then the sins washed away. They went with it. Not me. The narcissist is there. I'm fine. Weak. It's weak. Okay. I will now take questions. Let's go. One sentence. Question marks. Amazing things. I'm tired. I'll go to sleep soon. It's quite late here. It's getting on for 11. Ever thought about compassion fatigue? The only time I tend to think of the concept of compassion fatigue is when people are talking to me about their experiences of trying to treat, coach, or do therapy with people who have borderline personality disorder without going into a whole thing of, is it real, is it not? But what we would call borderline personality disorder. Yes, I do. Bob Sanders, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Jay's philosophy. Do you believe in MDMA therapy? I don't believe in it, but the data that's coming out suggests that it's doing pretty well, initially for depression and now for PTSD. Much more reliable results than with psychedelics, which makes sense to me based on my experience of psychedelics and MDMA in a non-clinical setting. Frodo, did you find that by going into contact with your father, that was the first boundary you really held and learned? No, it would be untrue to claim that that was the first boundary I held and learned. There were others before that. It was certainly a very significant one and an important one for sure. Somebody's given me 99 pence. It is Claire. Thank you, Claire. That's very kind of you. There's no question with it that I can see, though, Claire. Or am I? Oh, C11 has sent me £4.99. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you very much. That's very good of you. Do you have any understanding, says Spicy Sky Raisin, that's a cool name, of the comorbidities between autism and PDs? I've read about it, but I wouldn't feel confident to sit here and talk about the published literature that I've read because it was over a year ago and it's really not my field of specialization and at all. And I don't want to say anything. I'm having a hard time pinning down what clinicians mean when they say autism because I have lived with two people, two men, diagnosed with autism at the time when it was still a diagnosis. They were both diagnosed with Asperger's. They were both highly technical. They were both high IQ. I watched them have the most awful, awful, and borderline abusive relationships with their girlfriends who they lived with. It was a flat sharing situation, one in New Zealand and one in Malaysia. And then I read, so I was like, oh, well, I understand autism because I understand Asperger's, high functioning autism. And then I read other descriptions of autism, and I was like, I don't know how this is all going under the same umbrella. And when I was younger, I volunteered with kids who were uh, differently abled for various reasons, and some of those children were autistic. And I was like, I've never gotten clarity on exactly what they mean when they say autism, so I would rather not answer that. Baby Reindeer on Netflix is a good example of a narcissist. Yes, I understand that Richard G, the actor and the writer of the show, he has based it on a real experience. That's a real world experience. I myself could tolerate 15 minutes of it, and it was so close to home and so close to some of my experiences, I couldn't bear it. I had to switch it off. It was really creeping me out. Even the name Baby Reindeer brings back very unpleasant memories. This naming thing, Baby Reindeer, this cutesy thing, makes my skin crawl. She's brilliant, the actress in that. He does a great job, but she is, yeah, she's really, really good. But I have to be honest with you, I didn't have the stomach for it. But then people keep recommending it, so I should probably try again. Or watch it like with one eye and one finger in one ear. I'm looking for question marks. Here's a statement that ends with a question mark. Pork chop sandwich. I have two challenging personalities on my team at work. One of them recently filed a complaint against the other star employee due to what I perceive as a narcissistic injury. Thoughts on the approach? I think realistically, in a situation like this, I've not coached for a while. So you're asking me to go to bits of my brain that are like switched off. When I used to coach with questions like this, I would pop out, I would say, so if we were coaching, I'd say, okay, let's drop psychology for a second, because you've asked me a psychological question, you're looking for a psychological answer, but I really need to know more about the power dynamics here. And when I say the power dynamics, what can you do? What are your responsibilities? Tell me everything. What can they do? What are their responsibilities? How much authority do you have over them? If something goes wrong, what can they do professionally to hurt each other? What can they do to hurt you professionally? What can they do to hurt the company? And then we'd really need to talk from power, practicality and power first. That might not be a very satisfying answer, but if you take it and you think and you really rinse through the situation, like forget psychology for a second, where are the power dynamics and the power boundaries here? What can I do? I presume you're a manager, to get the best work I can from both of these people without the clash of personalities derailing that. And it could be a conversation in which you say to them, I'm your manager, you're here to work. It's not a social club. Get back to fucking work. I was channeling my grandfather for that one. Good old Grandpa Vin. Stop whinging and get back to work. You're not supposed to be friends. It's a job. He didn't say that to us. He used to say that to his employees. He was a savage. He was a savage. Well known for it. Well liked as well, of course. Hard but fair. We can't habituate to shame. Can an MPD reframe us with trauma and rescripting? I think I know what you're asking me, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'd rather you re-asked that question. When you say we, you mean humans can't habituate to shame. And I think you're asking me, how do people with narcissistic personality disorder therefore cope with their shame? If that is your question, then all the behavior that you see, every single one of the diagnostic criteria from the DSM and the ICD-10 is not a descriptor of mental illness as much as it is a descriptor of an observed, externally observed coping mechanism to deal with that shame. Kevin says men are not interested in dating anymore in the USA. Women should not ever assume that all their choices are gone. Do you like Pink Floyd? I've always really liked the song Wish You Were Here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year, running over the same old ground. You know that one? It's a great track. It's a great track. I always think about that when people talk to me about modern relationships. I think about that track. Can I borrow $5? Says the beef. I don't have $5. I have euros and I have great British pounds with the Queen's face on them. I don't have the sigil of the Illuminati on my money. And Novo Ordo Seclorum. There's a lot of information out there about ASDs. Yeah, I don't. I see. I don't consume material like that. So people would regularly ask me about the overlap between different mental health issues, and so I would then go and specifically research them. And I just found I was getting more and more lost. I was like, okay, what are we? What are we talking about here? I couldn't quite pin it down, but that might be an intellectual failing on my part. Don't know. Hi, to be introvert is a mental disorder? No, no. I don't think so. I mean, I think like for something to qualify as a mental illness, it has to really cause you a lot of suffering. And the only thing that causes me a lot of suffering is people. Lots of people and noise. And sometimes I like it. But I seem to have a lower tolerance for it than people who are more. It's a spectrum. So people who are more extroverted on the spectrum. People who are further on the spectrum, they can really tolerate it. It doesn't bother them. They don't get tired. And then people who are extroverted love it. They're highly energized by it. But I don't think it's classed as a mental disorder. I don't really know where it stands clinically anyway. Introvert and extrovert, I think these are Jungian concepts originally. The last 15 minutes of Baby Reindeer was shocked face, horrified face. I believe you. I believe you. Do you know how healing it is when you make INFJs laugh out loud? Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Is INFJ the rarest one and the most introverted one? Or have I made that up? Afghan Wotan? God, I need my glasses back. Afghan Watan. Hello, Richard. How come the narcissistic folk so identical regardless of ethnicity, language, or education? Still don't know to this day. Don't know. Don't know where they get this weird artificial intelligence seeming, alien hive mind seeming. I mean, you can stick a room full of people together. Abused in Botswana, abused in Okinawa, abused in Malaysia, abused in Kazakhstan, abused in Surrey, United Kingdom. And the narcissists all say the same stuff. They all say the same things and respond to the same pressures in the same way. Why? Why aren't we saying like, even dolphins apparently have dialects that are regional. Like dolphins squeaking at each other and making those weird sounds have regional dialects. But narcissism seems to be a void of regional dialect. It seems to be a universal language of abuse, like mathematics. Mathematics is only abusive to people like me who don't like it. I mean, mathematics being so beyond culture, so beyond geography, so beyond history, so beyond time and place that it becomes like the purest language with which you can make replicable representations of reality. Narcissism is like that. Narcissism is like pure mathematics. It always comes out the same way. And Don't know why. I've in my early phases of coaching, I found a lot of people. This might be related, might not. When narcissistic relationships were playing out, there was either a big gap in age, a big gap in geography, a big gap in culture. The fireworks are really happening, right? Um, or from very, very different ethnic groups. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. You would think there'd be a regional dialect to narcissism, but I'm not aware of one. Let's do two more questions and I'll go to bed. People are sending me money. Andy Kopias. I want to show you this. Why can I not show you this? Andy Kopias has sent me £5 and said, Jesus loves you. Thank you, Andy. AutoStar Super Chats. Yeah, should be the other ones. Honestly, I have... Sorry about this. 1 second. Well, I see this is dealing with my control issues now. Californian dollars. That's not correct, is it? Canadian dollars. Honestly, I have a very hard time believing they can function as a human being in society. How do they perceive their own consciousness? Is it split? They generally, if it's pure narcissistic personality disorder, which is very rare because it's usually it's a highly comorbid PD. It might be the most comorbidly diagnosed PD, meaning it's almost never diagnosed on its own. They don't function particularly well in society. Like if somebody who's really, really deeply into narcissistic personality disorder, they shouldn't function well in society, at least not in the long term, unless. See, this is the literature that I want to talk about. I don't think I should talk about it here because I think it starts to get very confusing. So there is published literature on more stable forms of narcissistic personality disorder. But then I would say, that's why I said before, psychopathy is probably more important subject to study than narcissism. I would say that's psychopathy with pronounced narcissistic traits. Because if you're subsumed in a delusion, this world does not reward people who are subsumed in delusion. If you're deep into grandiose delusion, well, forget everything I just said. Forget everything you know about narcissism. I have a human, they go out into the world. Imagine, like those little toys, the wind-up robots that probably don't exist anymore, and then they just walk in a straight line. This little wind-up robot human, we're sending her out into the world, and at every point, they dramatically overestimate their importance in every social interaction and frequently overestimate their ability to do any particular job that's given them and their capacity to do jobs that they've not been given. How could that person possibly flourish? There would be a limited number of situations and a limited number of cultures in which they would flourish, but the people around them would have to be very patient, very empathic, too understanding, too tolerant. You would need a culture that has placed tolerance as a higher order cultural value than competence. But I don't know any culture like that. That's in decline and falling apart into decadence. That made my eyes itch. So I've said this before: the narcissism is a problem, but codependency is a problem, and hypertolerance of. I mean, you've asked a really, really, really good question, and I could do 3 hours on it. So here's another way of looking at it, and then I'll move on because I should go to sleep soon. In a normal culture, what's normal? Let's fantasize there's a sane culture, or there was a sane culture, and you have a highly narcissistic person, and they are the wind-up toy robot that I told you, and he or she goes out into the world, and in every single situation, they overestimate their importance in the social interaction, and they overestimate their competence, of job to do the jobs they have been given, and even to do the jobs they haven't been given, which makes them resentful. Plus they're exploitative, plus they're bullying, um, plus they lie a lot. Then it's a maladaptive personality disorder to that same culture. So you've said how I have a hard time believing they can function as a human being in society. Which society? Which culture? Which society? Which culture? A culture in which they flourish. A culture. So forget everything again. Wipe everything again. I'm asking you to wipe your memories a few times here. Now we have the toy, the little tin god, the little toy robot, the girl, the guy, overestimate their ability. They're not given the jobs they think they should be given because they have no idea what the limits of their competence are, and they whinge about it, and they're resentful, and they say, I'm the victim of a conspiracy theory. Bob shouldn't have got that job. It should have gone to me. They're all jealous of my prowess. And you're interpersonally bullying, and you lie a lot. Then you should fail in that culture, in a culture. What would you say about the culture in which people like that don't fail, they flourish? And I can point off the top of my head to multiple examples of people at the tops of our cultures. I wish it would stop doing that. In positions of authority and power, you can think of politicians at various levels in different countries, your country, my country, their country, that side of the aisle, the other side of the aisle. They shouldn't be. I wouldn't trust them to keep the shelves full of beans at Asda, let alone run the economy of a country or assist in forming that country's foreign policy or its domestic policy. These are absolute nincompoops, and it's not hidden. They're not like so well spoken and so well put together, and they present very well, and they're very diplomatic, and they play the political game. No, they're morons, and they're clear morons. They embarrass themselves all the time. Are they removed from office? No, they're rewarded. So there's books and books written about this. Who's these? Someone in the comments tell me the Scottish psychiatrist who wrote the books. Is it R.D. Is it R.D. Lang? Or is that the woman who sang Constant Craving? I'm so tired of doing shit dad jokes now. Um, that's K.D. Lang. R.D. Lang is the Scottish psychiatrist who basically tried to blow this whole issue open. Like, you can't just talk about the individual, you have to talk about the culture. Then you go on to ask, how do they perceive their own consciousness? Is it split? Could do 3 hours on it. Basically, yes. So I propose that the conscious life of a narcissist is nothing like your conscious life or my conscious life. And if people had a better understanding of this, they would never ask the question, am I a narcissist again? So I'm a narcissist. What's more fun? What's more fun? No, it's more fun if you're the narcissist. You're the narcissist. Thank you, Jody. Very good question. Too much to get into, but we covered bits of it. You're the narcissist. We're at a table in a restaurant, and we're engaged in conversation, and I'm talking to you, and you're talking back, and we're having a conversation. And the whole time, so look at me, the whole time you're looking at me, you're trying to create an image inside of your mind of how you look through my eyes. And you're checking that image moment by moment. You're talking to me, you're ordering wine, you're making conversation, you're telling jokes, and you're constantly checking how how you look through my eyes. How does he see me now? 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 And you might think that's exhausting. Doesn't end there. They don't have to check how they look to every other person in the restaurant. Exhausting. They're constantly making simulations and representations of how they look. How do I look now? How do I look now? Am I convincing them? Am I pulling this off? Is this working? Is this working? Is this working? So that's multiple levels of split consciousness. And to finish it off, they then have to check how their behavior looks to the superego injunction that is the punitive, evil, internal, sacrificial god, the Moloch. Because if they get it wrong, the Moloch will eat them and demand that they sacrifice themselves to the Moloch. So they're checking how they look to you, how they look from the side to other people, how they look, how they look in that moment to the Moloch, and they might even bring up images of their long dead enemies, people who abused them, people who gave them narcissistic injury, and imagine how they, the narcissist, would look, you, the narcissist, you're imagining moment by moment how you look in the eyes of other people. It is very much a, how do I look? Am I pulling this off? Am I, what reaction am I receiving? And am I getting the reaction I want from these people? So yes, split consciousness, absolutely. It's 1 hour. I would love to talk to you more. I'm perfectly happy, but I can feel my brain getting tired. And I did say I would go to bed earlier tonight. I'm doing a small seminar tomorrow talking about narcissistic psychopathy here in Spain. And so I must sleep. Was that useful? I hope it was useful. I felt a bit rambly at points. I'm a little bit tired. Other people sent me money. I feel bad. Let me just quickly look. Melissa Coleman sent me $10. That's very kind of you to send me money, folks. You don't have to do that. It's very good of you. I appreciate it. Yeah, people are happy. Cool. All right, that's good then. So we did it. Oh yes, the seminar in Liverpool is happening on May the 25th and the 26th of this month. If you are thinking of coming, you should be aware that Liverpool city centre is a very popular tourist destination now, and so the hotels will fill up at the last minute. Stag do's, hen do's, birthday parties, all kinds of stuff. If you are going to come, get the ticket now, get your hotels booked now. Because if you try to get a hotel outside of Liverpool, the nearest place is the Wirral. And for some reason I can't fathom, the Wirral is where I'm from. You have to go through a tunnel under the River Mersey to get there. And we only have about 5 hotels on the whole peninsula. It's crap. If you're going to come, try and get it booked this week. Before your flights. Flights you can always get last minute because you can fly into Manchester. It's 45 minutes drive from Manchester. If you can't get to Liverpool, it's not a problem. But your hotels, book them. Try and get them at least 7-8 days in advance of the seminar. Otherwise, you'll be stuck and you won't be happy. So that's it, ladies and gents. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you.